My husband left me in the car at 6:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I watched the clock on the dashboard as another contraction rolled through me, and I remember thinking, 6 minutes apart. I can do the math. He was already grabbing his fishing rod from the back seat. It's only 12 minutes to the hospital, he said, not looking at me. You'll be fine. Women have been doing this for thousands of years. He kissed my forehead, a quick, absent peck, and then he was gone, climbing into his father's Chevy Silverado. I sat there in our Ford Explorer and watched the red taillights disappear down Mulberry Street. That was the morning I finally understood who I had married. My name is Destiny Dickerson. I was 29 years old, and I was about to give birth to our first child completely alone. But to understand how I ended up gripping the steering wheel of that car, breathing through a contraction in an empty driveway, you need to understand how I got here. You need to understand Brent Holloway. I met him 4 years ago at a backyard barbecue in Williamsport. He was charming, attentive, the kind of man who made you feel seen. We married after a year. I kept my last name, Dickerson, because my father had passed away and I wanted to carry a piece of him with me. Brent said he understood. Looking back, that was the first red flag I happily painted over. He understood a lot of things he never actually accepted. Brent worked for his father, Gerald, at Holloway Pipe and Fixture. Operations manager was a fancy title for Go Fair. Gerald was a widower who'd raised Brent alone since he was 15, and somewhere along the way, grief curdled into something else, absolute control. He kept Brent on a leash so tight the poor man couldn't breathe without checking for his father's approval. And then there were the fishing trips. Every single Saturday since Brent was 12. Not one missed. Not for holidays. Not for my birthday. Not even for our wedding. We had to move the ceremony to Sunday because Gerald had already reserved their spot at the lake. I told myself it was sweet. A testament to family values. What I didn't realize was that I would never, ever come before those trips. Not once. Not even when I was in labor with their granddaughter. The signs were there. Of course. They always are. A few months before my due date, I noticed money missing from our joint account. Small amounts. I asked Brent, and he waved it off. Business expenses. Babe, you wouldn't understand the supply chain. I work as a medical billing specialist. I understand numbers just fine. But I was tired. And pregnant. And I wanted to believe my husband wasn't lying to my face. My mother, Colleen, warned me 3 years ago. She sat me down at her kitchen table and said Brent seemed nice, but a man who couldn't stand up to his father wasn't really a man at all. I told her she was being unfair. Mothers are annoying like that, always being right about things you don't want to hear. So there I was, 6 in the morning, 9 months pregnant, alone. I sat in the car for a full minute after they drove away, not because I couldn't move, but because my brain simply refused to accept what my eyes had just seen. It felt like a bad dream, but the contraction that followed was real, and it snapped me back. I had 2 choices, fall apart, or drive. I drove. The 12 minutes to Williamsport Hospital felt like 12 hours. By the time I pulled into the emergency lot, my contractions were 4 minutes apart. I parked crooked across 2 spaces and didn't care. I called my sister, Janelle, from the parking lot, sobbing. Janelle is a paralegal in Philadelphia and has never liked Brent. She didn't ask questions. She just said she was getting in her car. She made the 2.5-hour drive in 2 hours flat. But first, I had to check myself in alone. The humiliation is something I'll never forget. The intake nurse asked for my emergency contact. I wrote N.A. She asked where the baby's father was. I said he was unavailable. She and the other nurse exchanged a look, that look women give each other when they understand something without words. A kind nurse named Rita squeezed my hand and said, "Honey, you're stronger than you know." Between contractions, I filled out my own insurance forms. I work in medical billing, so there I was, in active labor, writing down authorization codes because I knew exactly which ones they'd need. If that isn't the most ridiculous irony of my life, I don't know what is. You know the worst part? Even then, I checked my phone. 17 texts to Brent, all marked as read. He had seen them. He just hadn't responded. He was too busy watching his fishing line. Rita came back and asked if there was anyone else she could call. I looked at my phone, at those unanswered messages, and something inside me shifted. Not broke. shifted, like a door unlocking. No, I told her, there's no one else. But that wasn't true. There was me, and I was about to find out exactly how strong I could be. 11 hours. That's how long it took to bring my daughter into the world. 11 hours of contractions, breathing exercises, and nurses telling me I was doing great while I contemplated every choice that had led me to this moment. Then, around hour 6, everything stopped being beautiful. Lily May's heart rate dropped. Monitors started shrieking. Suddenly the room was full of people, and a doctor was talking about fetal distress and an emergency C-section. I was terrified. I grabbed my phone and texted Brent, baby in distress. Emergency surgery. Please come. 20 minutes later, he responded, I'm sure the docs have it handled. Dad says the bass are really biting today. Keep me posted. I read that text 3 times. I screenshotted it. Instinct. Maybe. Some part of me already building a case I didn't know I'd need. My daughter's life was on the line, and my husband was worried about fish. Lily May stabilized. No surgery. And at 5:47 that evening, she came into the world screaming, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, perfect. I cried when they put her on my chest, cried from relief, from joy, from the strange, hollow loneliness of experiencing the most important moment of my life without my partner there. I named her Lily May Dickerson, my last name. Some decisions make themselves. Janelle burst through the door at 6:30. She didn't say a word, just hugged me, then looked at Lily, then hugged me again. She held my daughter while I finally rested, and for the first time all day, the room felt like it had love in it. Brent showed up at 8:52 p.m., sunburned, smiling, smelling like lake water and beer. He brought a teddy bear from the gas station. The price tag was still on it, $7.99. Sorry, babe, he said, the fish were really biting. Dad needed help, but look, you did great. I did great, like I'd completed a school project. 3 weeks later, the hospital bill arrived, $23,847 after insurance. I went to check our joint savings account, where we'd carefully saved $18,000 over 2 years. The balance was $3,200, almost $15,000, gone. When I asked Brent, he got defensive. His father needed a loan for the business. No paperwork, no timeline. It's family, he said. We don't need paperwork. My husband had given away our savings to his father while I was pregnant, without telling me, without asking, and he saw nothing wrong with it. 2 weeks after that, I was doing laundry, because of course I was, and I found a receipt crumpled in the pocket of his fishing jacket. Lakeside Marine, $4,600 deposit on a fishing boat, dated 3 weeks before Lily was born. The exact same week Brent told me we couldn't afford the $200 repair for the broken heater in the nursery. I stood there in the laundry room, holding that receipt, listening to Lily cry in her cold nursery, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, something quieter, something more dangerous. I smoothed out the receipt, took a picture, and put it back. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew he wasn't going to see it coming. I went back to work in May, 10 weeks after Lily was born, not just for the money, but for the access, for the computer and the printer and the privacy to start my new project, figuring out exactly how badly my husband had screwed me over. Every lunch break, I sat in my car and went through 2 years of joint bank statements. The pattern was clear. Year 1, small amounts, $150 here, $200 there, business expenses, he'd said. Year 2, the amounts grew, $500, $800, $1,200, I'd noticed, but I'd believed him. The last 6 months, everything accelerated, $2,000, $3,500, $4,100, large transfers, always to Holloway Pipe and Fixture LLC, always without my knowledge. I added it up 3 times because I couldn't believe the number. $67,340, $67,000, money for our future, for our daughter's future, gone. I cried in my car for 5 minutes, then I wiped my face and got back to work. The following Saturday, while Brent was at the lake, I drove to Lakeside Marine. Lily babbled happily in her car seat, unaware her mother was about to do some reconnaissance. A helpful salesman pulled up the order for a 2024 Tracker Pro Team 195 TXW, fully loaded. Total price, $38,500. Registered owner, Brent Allen Holloway. Not Gerald. Not the business. Brent. My husband had bought himself a $38,000 boat with our money, while telling me we couldn't afford a heater for his daughter's room. I called Janelle from the parking lot. She listened, and then she said, "I know an attorney. They call her the closer. She hasn't lost a contested divorce in 6 years." I wrote down the number, but I needed more. With Janelle's help, I pulled public records for Holloway Pipe and Fixture. Brent wasn't just an employee. He was listed as 50% owner, filed 18 months ago. He'd never told me, which meant he was personally liable for half of everything: the debts, the back taxes, whatever financial disaster his father had created. I also got our phone records. Brent and Gerald talked 3 to 4 hours every single day. And the texts. Gerald referred to me as that woman. 2 days before I gave birth, he texted, "Don't let her guilt you into skipping Saturday. She's playing you." The day after Lily was born, "Proud of you for standing your ground. She needs to learn she's not your priority." I wasn't family. Our daughter wasn't family. Only the Holloway bloodline mattered. My mother moved in that week. Colleen Dickerson, retired school nurse, 5'4" and not someone you want to mess with. She never said, "I told you so." She just helped. She cooked. She held Lily. She listened. That restraint was its own kind of gift. I thought about my grandmother a lot then. Lillian May Dickerson, the woman Lily was named after. She raised 4 kids alone after her husband died in a factory accident. She never complained. She just did what needed to be done. She used to say Dickerson women were made of stronger stuff than most people realized. We just didn't advertise it. I was finally starting to understand. On a Tuesday afternoon in late June, I called Patricia Okonkwo. I told her everything. The hospital, the fishing trips, the money, the boat, the texts, the business, all of it. She listened, asked a few questions, and was quiet for a moment. Then she said 5 words that changed everything: "You have an excellent case." Patricia Okonkwo's office was in Harrisburg. She was 44, with sharp gray hair and reading glasses on a chain she wore like a weapon. She'd been a forensic accountant for 12 years before going to law school, switching careers after her own bad divorce. She charged $350 an hour, but offered payment plans for cases she believed in. After reviewing my documentation, the bank statements, the boat receipt, the text messages, she believed in mine. She smiled when she finished reading, not a friendly smile, the smile of someone who sees victory on the horizon. "Let's talk about what you're entitled to," she said. The discovery phase of my divorce revealed things I hadn't expected. Holloway Pipe and Fixture owed $134,000 in back taxes. Years of creative accounting, what the IRS would call fraud. The company was insolvent, surviving only on cash infusions. Cash infusions from where? From my joint checking account. From the $67,000 my husband had been funneling to his father. Our savings had been keeping Gerald's failing business alive while I thought we were building a future. And as 50% owner, Brent was personally liable for half of everything. Patricia took off her glasses. "Your husband," she said, "is in very serious trouble, and he doesn't even know it yet. The house was our biggest asset. We'd bought it for $285,000. The down payment was a gift from my parents. My mother and my late father had given us $35,000 to start our lives. I had the canceled check. I had the gift letter, specifically stating the money was for my contribution. That house was mine, and I was about to prove it." Patricia's eyes lit up when she saw those documents. "In Pennsylvania," she explained, "gifts to one spouse can be treated as separate property under certain circumstances." That down payment documentation? It changed everything. I wasn't just entitled to half the equity. I had a strong claim to the full $35,000, plus my share of the appreciation. Current equity in the house? Approximately $67,000. Between the down payment reimbursement and my share of the rest, I was looking at walking away with enough to start over. Not rich, but free. And then there was the boat. That $38,500 fishing boat had been purchased with a $4,600 deposit from our joint account. Marital funds. Under Pennsylvania law, I was entitled to half its value. Patricia explained that if Brent couldn't afford to buy me out, the court could order the boat sold. The proceeds would be split. Given Brent's impending financial problems, there was no way he could come up with that money. The fishing boat that was more important than his daughter's nursery heater might end up being sold to pay his ex-wife. I'm not saying karma is real, but I'm also not saying it isn't. Patricia advised me to open a separate checking account in my name only. Perfectly legal, she assured me. Married people have the right to their own money. I started depositing my paychecks there instead of our joint account. Every 2 weeks. Another $1,200 going somewhere Brent couldn't touch it. I also made copies of everything. Tax returns for the past 3 years. Bank statements going back to the beginning of our marriage. The deed to our house. Both car titles. Every text message between Brent and Gerald that I could access. I kept the originals in their usual places and hid the copies in a box in my mother's closet in Scranton. And I started keeping a journal. Not a diary of my feelings, I didn't have time for that. A log. Dates. Times. Facts. Every time Brent chose fishing over his daughter, I wrote it down. May 3rd. Brent left at 5 a.m. for fishing. Lily May had a fever all night. Temperature reached 101.2. I handled it alone. He came home at 7 o'clock p.m., asked if she was feeling better, then went to bed. May 10th. Asked Brent to skip fishing for Lily's baptism at St. Mark's. He said Gerald already reserved their spot at the lake. Baptism moved to Sunday. May 17th. Brent came home at 9 p.m. Lily May had been crying for 2 hours with colic. I asked where he'd been. He said, "You wouldn't understand. It's a father-son thing. I have his daughter. I understand plenty." May 24th. Brent transferred $1,800 to Holloway Pipe and Fixture. I found the notification on our banking app. When I asked about it, he said it was none of my business. Our joint account, none of my business. You know what's surprisingly easy? Hiding things from someone who doesn't pay attention to you. I could have been planning a surprise party. I could have been learning to speak Mandarin. I could have been training for a marathon. Instead, I was preparing to divorce him. And he noticed exactly as much as he noticed everything else about my life. Which is to say, nothing at all. He never asked why I was working late. Never wondered why my mother had moved in. Never questioned why I seemed distant. He was too busy thinking about his next fishing trip to notice his wife was planning her escape. I used to spend my evenings watching true crime documentaries. You know, the ones where the wife always seems to know something the police don't. Now I was living my own investigation. Turns out I'm much better at being the detective than I ever expected. Although, to be fair, my husband wasn't exactly a criminal mastermind. More of a criminal, regular mind. The bar was not high. Patricia and I decided on a filing strategy. In Pennsylvania, you can file for divorce at any time, but timing matters. She suggested filing on a Friday afternoon, as close to the courthouse closing time as possible. That way, Brent couldn't file any counter motions or emergency requests until Monday. It would give me the entire weekend to execute my plan. Friday, July 26th. Patricia filed at 4:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the courthouse closed. She filed for divorce on grounds of indignities, Pennsylvania's legal term for treatment that makes the marriage intolerable. She filed for full legal and physical custody of Lily May. She filed for child support based on our income differential. She filed for equitable distribution of assets, including reimbursement of the $35,000 down payment. She filed for my fair share of the fishing boat's value. Everything was in motion. Now came the hardest part, acting normal for one more night. Friday evening, I made dinner, spaghetti with meat sauce, Brent's favorite. We ate together, watched some TV, went to bed early. He fell asleep by 10 o'clock. I lay next to him, staring at the ceiling, running through my checklist. 2 suitcases packed and hidden in the garage. Lily May's car seat already installed in my car. Important documents already at my mother's house. Wedding ring ready to leave behind. At 5 o'clock Saturday morning, Brent's alarm went off. Fishing day. He kissed my forehead while I pretended to sleep. "I'll be back tonight," he whispered. "Have a good day." I kept my eyes closed until I heard Gerald's truck pull into the driveway, until I heard Brent loading his gear into the back, until I heard the engine start and the tires crunch on gravel as they drove away. Then I opened my eyes. It was time. Saturday, July 27th, 5:15 a.m. I moved fast but calm. I'd rehearsed this in my mind 100 times over the past month. Every step planned. Every action deliberate. No panic. No second guessing. Just execution. 2 suitcases came out of the garage. One with my clothes and essentials. One with everything Lily May would need for the next few weeks. I loaded them into my car, a 2018 Nissan Rogue that was in my name only. One of the few smart decisions I'd made before this marriage went sideways. Lily May was still sleeping when I lifted her from her crib. She stirred a little, made that soft baby noise that always melted my heart, then settled against my shoulder. I carried her through the house I'd called home for 3 years, past the kitchen where I'd made 1,000 dinners Brent barely noticed, past the living room where he'd watch TV while I did all the night feedings, past the nursery with the heater that had never been fixed. I strapped her into her car seat. She stayed asleep. Perfect baby. Always had been. Before I left, I went back inside one more time. I walked to our bedroom and placed my wedding ring on Brent's pillow. The ring he'd proposed with 4 years ago, back when I believed he was capable of putting someone else first. I didn't want it anymore. It represented a promise he'd never kept. On the kitchen counter, I left the divorce papers, all 47 pages of them, and on top, a single yellow sticky note: "You can't catch a wife and release her. Read page 14. I thought it was clever. Fishing humor. He'd appreciate it eventually. Or he wouldn't. Either way, I laughed when I wrote it. First time I'd laughed in months. By 5:45 a.m., I was on Route 81 North, heading towards Scranton, 70 miles to my mother's house, 70 miles to safety, 70 miles to the beginning of whatever came next. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the Pennsylvania hills in shades of orange and pink. Lily May slept in the back seat. The radio played softly, some old song from the 80s that I didn't recognize but found comforting anyway. I drove exactly the speed limit. No need to attract attention. No need to rush. Brent wouldn't be home for another 15 hours. By then, I'd be settled in my childhood bedroom, drinking tea with my mother, watching my daughter sleep in the portable crib we'd set up days ago. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. Brent got home at 8:23 p.m. I know because Gerald's truck has GPS tracking, something Brent mentioned once years ago, and I filed away in my memory. He pulled into the driveway at 8:19, 4 minutes to unload his gear and walk inside. I can imagine what he found. Dark house, empty rooms, silence where there should have been a baby crying or a wife asking about his day, the papers on the counter, the sticky note. I imagine him reading that note, confused at first, then flipping to page 14, where Patricia had itemized every single withdrawal from our joint account, $67,340, listed by date and amount. Page 15, the boat purchase, with copies of the receipt and registration. Page 16, his 50% ownership of Holloway Pipe and Fixture and his personal liability for the company's $134,000 in tax debt. Page 17, my claim to the down payment and house equity. His hands must have been shaking by the time he finished. At 8:47 p.m., my phone screen lit up. Brent calling. I didn't answer. Straight to voicemail. 8:48 p.m. Brent calling. Voicemail. 8:49 p.m. Text message. Babe, what is this? Where are you? 8:52 p.m. Brent calling. Voicemail. 8:55 p.m. Text. This is crazy. Let's talk about this. Come home. 9:03 p.m. Text. I know I messed up. We can fix this, please. 9:15 p.m. Brent calling. The 17th call in less than 30 minutes. Voicemail. By midnight, he'd called 47 times. I knew because I checked the log the next morning. 47 calls to a number I'd blocked at 6 a.m. that morning, right after I crossed the Scranton city limits. Some people say forgiveness is letting go of anger. I say blocking someone's number is letting go of their ability to annoy you. Same energy, faster results. Sunday morning, Gerald drove to my mother's house. I watched from the upstairs window as his truck pulled up, as he marched to the front door, as he pounded on it with his fist. Colleen answered. My mother, 5'4", 63 years old, Retired school nurse, not someone you'd expect to be intimidating, but she stood in that doorway like a fortress. I couldn't hear what Gerald said, but I could imagine. Demands to see me, accusations, maybe threats. Colleen's response was calm and clear. I heard every word through the open window. My daughter and granddaughter are resting. You can leave now, or I can call the police. Your choice. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. Gerald stood there for a long moment, probably trying to figure out how to bully a woman who clearly wasn't going to be bullied. Then he turned around and drove away. He wasn't used to women who didn't back down. He was about to meet a lot more of them. The next few months unfolded exactly as Patricia had predicted. Without my income covering the mortgage, the house payments fell behind immediately. Brent missed August, missed September. By October, the bank had sent foreclosure warnings. The house he'd prioritized fishing trips over was slipping through his fingers. Meanwhile, Patricia's forensic accountant had torn through Holloway pipe and fixtures books and found clear evidence of tax fraud going back 3 years. As an officer of the court, Patricia was required to report suspected fraud to the appropriate authorities. She did so in late August. By October, the IRS had opened an investigation. By November, they'd frozen Gerald's business accounts pending a full audit. The dominoes were falling. September brought depositions, under oath. On the record, Patricia deposed both Brent and Gerald separately. Brent's deposition was pathetic. He couldn't explain where the money had gone. He claimed he didn't know about the tax debt. He said his father had handled all the business finances. He threw Gerald under the bus at every opportunity while somehow still defending him. It was like watching a man try to save a sinking ship by drilling more holes in the hull. But Gerald's deposition was the real show. His attorney had clearly advised him to protect himself, to minimize his own liability, to put distance between himself and the financial disaster he'd created. Patricia asked him about the money transfers from our joint account. Gerald said he'd asked Brent for help. Brent offered. He didn't force anyone to do anything. Patricia asked if he knew the money belonged to both Brent and me. Gerald said, Brent handles his own household. That's not my business. Then Patricia asked about his influence over Brent, about the daily phone calls, about the texts calling me, that woman, about the Saturday fishing trips that took priority over everything else in Brent's life. Gerald paused, looked at his lawyer, looked at Brent, who was sitting in the corner of the room, watching his father testify, and then Gerald said the words that ended their relationship forever. Brent's always been easily led. He's too weak to say no to anyone. That's his problem, not mine. I wasn't in the room, but Patricia told me about it later. She said Brent's face went pale, said he looked like someone had punched him in the stomach, said he finally, saw his father for what he really was. But it was too late. 3 years too late for me, a lifetime too late for Brent. The divorce was finalized in November, 4 months after I filed. Patricia got me everything she'd promised, the down payment reimbursement, my share of the house equity, full legal and physical custody of Lily May, child support of $1,100 per month, automatically deducted from Brent's paycheck. Brent got supervised visitation, 1 Saturday a month, supervised at a facility with social workers present. Because the court reviewed his pattern of behavior, the documented absences, the prioritizing of leisure over parental responsibility, the financial deception, and determined he could not be trusted with unsupervised access to his own daughter. The fishing trips that were so sacred, so unmissable, so important that he'd left his wife in labor to attend them, they're exactly what cost him real time with Lily May. I need to tell you about the phone call, the one I mentioned earlier. That first Saturday night, July 27th, 2 hours after Brent found the papers, his 48th call of the evening, except this time, before I blocked his number, I let it go to voicemail just to hear what he'd say. He was crying, actually crying, sobbing. I'd never heard him cry before, not in 4 years together, not even at his grandfather's funeral. Please, Destiny, please come home. I was wrong about everything. I'll change. I swear I'll change. I'll skip fishing. I'll be a real husband, a real father. Please, just give me another chance. I can't do this without you. I listened to that voicemail once, then I deleted it. I thought about responding for about 3 seconds. Then I remembered the text message he'd sent while our daughter's heart rate was dropping. Dad says the bass are really biting today. Keep me posted. I blocked his number. I never answered again. Now, let me tell you how this all turned out. The house sold in January. Foreclosure auction. It went for less than market value, $262,000. But after the mortgage was paid off and Patricia extracted my settlement, I walked away with $78,000. That included my $35,000 down payment, my share of the remaining equity, and a few additional adjustments the court approved based on Brent's documented financial deception. The boat. Brent had been making loan payments for about a year, so the balance was down to around $19,000. When he couldn't keep up with payments after the divorce, the court ordered it sold. Went at auction for $31,000. Boats depreciate fast. After the loan payoff, about $12,000 remained. I got my half, $6,000. Not much, but it felt like justice. That boat he bought instead of fixing our daughter's nursery heater ended up paying for her new crib. Child support started flowing in December, $1,100 a month. Automatically deducted from Brent's paycheck before he even sees it. He can't hide from it. Can't forget to pay. Can't claim he doesn't have the money. It just happens. Like clockwork. Every 2 weeks. $550 deposited into my account. The most reliable Brent has ever been about anything. I moved to Scranton permanently in January. Found a 3-bedroom townhouse about 15 minutes from my mother. Used $15,000 of my settlement for the security deposit, furniture, and an emergency fund. Invested $40,000 in index funds for long-term security, something my grandmother always preached about. Putting money somewhere it could grow. I call the remaining savings my "never depend on anyone again" account. It's earning 4.5% interest. My ex-husband never earned my interest in anything. In March, I got promoted. Senior billing specialist at a larger medical practice in Scranton. Working for a woman named Claudia who raised 3 kids as a single mom. She gets it. The salary is $58,000 a year plus benefits. Not rich, but comfortable, stable. Mine. Lily Mae is 18 months old now. She's walking, talking, well, babbling mostly. But I swear she said, "Mama," last week. And my heart nearly exploded. She has my eyes in, unfortunately, Brent's nose. But that's the only thing of his she's getting. Everything else, the values, the strength, the understanding that she deserves to be someone's priority, that's coming from me and my mother and my sister. The women who showed up. The women who stayed. As for Brent? He lost the house. He lost the boat. He lost unsupervised access to his daughter. He lost any respect I ever had for him. After the foreclosure, he moved into a rented room above his father's shop. The shop Gerald no longer owns. The IRS investigation concluded in February. Gerald had to sell Holloway pipe and fixture to cover the back taxes, the penalties, and the interest. He works for the new owners now as a regular employee. Takes orders from a 32-year-old named Kyle, who calls him Jerry and makes him clean the warehouse on Fridays. Brent's supervised visitation with Lily Mae is scheduled for 1 Saturday a month. In the 6 months since the divorce was finalized, he's shown up for exactly 2 of them. The other 4 times, he canceled. Always has an excuse. Car trouble, work emergency, not feeling well. Same pattern, different context. And those sacred Saturday fishing trips? The ones that couldn't be missed for anything, not for a wedding, not for a funeral, not for the birth of a child? Gerald told Brent he's too busy now. Has to work weekends at the warehouse because Kyle needs him there. Funny how that works. Funny how the thing Brent sacrificed his marriage for has disappeared completely. Funny how Gerald's priorities shifted the moment they became inconvenient for him. I'd feel sorry for Brent if I had any sympathy left. But I used it all up on that drive to the hospital. Breathing through contractions. Wondering why I wasn't worth 12 minutes of delay on a fishing trip. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was at the Wegmans on Route 6 doing my weekly grocery shopping. Lily Mae was in the cart, chewing on a teething ring and charming everyone who walked by. We'd just grabbed some bananas when I turned the corner into the cereal aisle. Brent was standing there. He looked older, tired, thinner, like life had been chewing on him the way Lily Mae was chewing on that teething ring. He was holding a box of generic cornflakes, the store brand. Not even the real Kellogg's, and staring at the price like it personally offended him. He saw me at the same moment I saw him. His face went through about 6 emotions in 3 seconds: surprise, shame, hope, desperation, regret. Something that might have been love once but had curdled into something else. Destiny, he said, his voice cracked. I want to say. I waited, not because I wanted to hear it, but because I'd earned the right to watch him struggle. I'm sorry, he finally managed. I was wrong about everything. My dad, the money, the fishing, leaving you at the hospital, all of it. I was so stupid. I see that now. I didn't know. I didn't understand what I was throwing away. I looked at him for a long moment. This man I'd married, this man I'd believed in, this man who'd chosen a fishing trip over the birth of his daughter, who'd stolen $67,000 from our future, who'd let his father call me that woman without ever defending me once. I thought about all the things I could say, all the anger I could unleash, all the years of frustration and disappointment and betrayal that I could pour out right there in the cereal aisle of a Scranton Wegmans. But here's the thing I've learned about revenge. The best revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's moving on so completely that their suffering becomes irrelevant to you. So I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing that he still had any power over my emotions. I just looked at him, smiled slightly, and said, I hope you catch something worth keeping someday, Brent. Then I pushed my cart past him, grabbed a box of Cheerios for Lily May, and kept walking. I paid for my groceries, loaded them into my car, drove home to my townhouse, where my mother was making dinner, and my daughter's toys were scattered across the living room floor, and my life was messy and imperfect and entirely my own. I didn't look back. There's nothing behind me that I need. Some people show you who they are in small moments. Every Saturday morning for 3 years, Brent showed me exactly who he was. He showed me that his father would always come first. That tradition mattered more than commitment. That I was an afterthought in my own marriage. But he made it undeniable on one Saturday morning in March, when he chose a fishing trip over watching his daughter come into the world, when he left me in that car with contractions 6 minutes apart and told me I could handle it. He was right about one thing. Well, I could handle it. I handled the accident. I handled the labor. I handled the delivery. I handled the children his life. Documenting every detail. Carrying my pain. Fighting for divorce. And rebuilding my entire life from the ground up. The woman who drove herself to the hospital 1 year later, she can do anything. And that's the thing about being underestimated. When someone assumes you're perfect, they never see you coming. They never prepare for you to feel bad. They're too busy looking at your life to notice the story in your own life. So, keep that in mind, and maybe it's useful for someone out there listening to this story. When someone shows you they'll never put you first, believe them. Don't make excuses. Don't take that challenge. Don't convince yourself that love is enough. Believe in the first time, the 10th time, the 100th time, and then make the only decision that really matters. Put yourself first. Because nobody else is going to do it for you. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing your own thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and if you want to hear more stories like this, there's another one waiting for you on the screen right now. I think you're going to love it.